Greetings, I'm your host, Dr. Wolfula, and when I'm not doing a lot of cardio, I'm here at the Wolfula reviewing movies. Welcome to the first review of AHHctober, my annual celebration of the Halloween season. In this installment, I'll be reviewing a relatively obscure cult horror flick, but one you really ought to see, especially by Halloween. Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, released in 2006. Now, the film is, for the most part, a found footage flick, but what caught my eye years ago was its novel concept. The film deals with an amateur Blair Witch news crew following a slasher villain's day-to-day. This sounds like an interesting premise by itself, but layered on top of it is the idea that this slasher killer exists in a world where all of the slasher icons we love, like Jason, Michael, and Freddy, all exist and are idolized by this young slasher.
And in Haddonfield, a prodigal son named Michael Myers has struck in a similar fashion on or near Halloween on at least 4 different occasions.
So, if you've ever wanted to see a movie taking place in a shared slasher cinematic universe outside of Freddy vs. Jason, this flick's got your number.
You came to me to find out how guys like Mike and Chucky and Freddy do what they do, not why.
Behind the Mask is more than just a clever gimmick, though. The killer at the heart of the film is the titular Leslie Vernon, played by Nathan Basil.
I'm Leslie Vernon, hi.
And the movie definitely plays against type with its villain. Leslie is depicted as anything but some silent, violent maniac. Instead, we as an audience discover, along with the interviewer Taylor Gentry, played by Angela Goethals, that Leslie Vernon is just a cool dude. A goofy, sensitive, energetic Renaissance man filled to the brim with charm and quirkiness.
You want to see a magic trick?
Sure.
You got a deck of cards on you?
No.
No. Yeah, Doug, you got a deck of cards on you?
Dude, why would I have a deck of cards?
Check your left front pocket.
What the? Holy fucking sweet.
Todd.
What? That was fucking sweet.
Nathan Basil's performance is magnetic. He's instantly likable as Leslie, and at times, it's easy to forget that the character is a deranged killer in the making, even when he's making it crystal clear that's what he is.
You can either bag it and go home with a clear conscience, or you can come inside.
Leslie isn't a shady creep despite stalking and killing people. He's totally transparent about what he does and has a professional air in how he carries his deeds out. Killing folks is his job, after all, and he takes it very seriously. Leslie comes off as a normal guy most of the time, but he has moments where the darker side comes out, and I really gots to hand it to Basil for delivering such a nuanced performance. The guy can switch on a dime.
I only keep pets I can eat.
Ultimately, Behind the Mask lives up to its name as a character study.
Paradise Lost. Found it.
The film explores the mind of a slasher villain, giving an intimate look into Leslie's life, seeking to answer the question, if a slasher villain actually existed and was a reasonable person, why would they do what they do?
I can't just sit here on the first night I ever met you and explain it to you. It's got to come from your own understanding of the process.
The movie doesn't have any definitive answer to this question, but Leslie Vernon is the closest thing to a justification for slasher villains. Part of Leslie's justification is old-fashioned revenge on his hometown of Glen Echo, which wronged him and his family.
That boy is about to seek revenge over the town that murdered him.
Leslie apparently was abused as a child by his parents, so he killed them and was in turn killed by the townspeople who tossed him over a waterfall where his body was picked apart by turtles. Though, seeing as Leslie appears perfectly fine, this backstory is suspect.
Because as far as the town of Glen Echo is concerned, I'm dead.
Beyond just getting to know the killer and how he thinks, Taylor and her camera guys also learn firsthand how he kills. What separates a slasher villain from any mere serial killer is the apparent months of planning that go into a slasher's killing spree. Leslie's breakdown of his process is how the film cleverly deconstructs the slasher genre's formula and many tropes. The reason why slasher films often feel so contrived is because, well, the slasher made things that way himself.
Of course, one of the first reactions will be to go for the flashlights in the kitchen. I put dead batteries in all them, so that'll mean they have to go down to the basement to check the fuse box.
Leslie plays his victims like puppets, pulling them by the strings to his eventual night of murder. The killer chooses his main target, the survivor girl, from afar and, while stalking her, builds a supporting cast of slasher movie stereotypes. Jocks, stoners, that sort.
They're good to pad your numbers with late in the game. Look at that guy.
The seemingly supernatural aspects of slasher villains are all revealed by Leslie to be parlor tricks.
Yeah, a lot of what we use is CGI.
When Leslie frightens his prey Kelly for the first time during the opening credits, he leads her to believe that he suddenly disappears and then quickly closes the door behind her. This is a trick. Leslie didn't teleport. The door was rigged to close with the help of the crew following him.
Tricks of the trade, plenty more where that came from.
The news crew is ultimately after a good story, like any journalists, and for much of the film, they act as Leslie's audience in awe of his tricks and abilities, with seemingly no moral objections to his planned killings.
Leslie, how did you do that, man?
The movie sort of lulls you in a false sense of security as Leslie draws the crew into his world. The flick is funny throughout the first half, especially with the jokes poking fun at the logic of the slasher genre.
You ought to be able to run like a freaking gazelle without getting winded. And plus, there's that whole thing of making it look like you're walking, and everybody else is running their asses off.
And things are kept light until the killings are underway. The movie has some of the most likable characters I've ever seen in a horror film. You never see the camera guys until the last act, but I grew to love their quips and jabs at Taylor's expense, who acts as the straight man.
Todd, keep up.
Don't be an uber bitch, I'm right here.
Taylor gets some added depth during the middle act when she starts to question the ethics of what she's doing and wonders who Leslie really is.
Taylor, where's the trust?
Trust.
Yes!
Oh, yeah, right. Where's it coming from you?
The tension between Taylor and Leslie adds an interesting layer that leads into the final act. One of the standout supporting characters in the film is Scott Wilson as Leslie's mentor, Eugene, a retired slasher killer who still has a passion for the trade, living with his beloved wife, Jamie.
It was a whole different world back when I was in the game.
Now, like Leslie, Eugene just comes off as a regular dude who's cool to hang out with. It's just that instead of talking about football with a beer in his hand, he'll talk about murder, but honestly, that's more interesting.
For good to be pitted against evil, you have to have evil.
There's a touching father-son dynamic between Leslie and Eugene that really adds some emotional depth to the killer. Leslie takes everything Eugene has to say to heart.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into that.
Eugene and Jamie are prideful of Leslie's accomplishments like he's their son. It's touching.
We are so proud of him. We're very proud of him.
Eugene himself is an old pro, more of a proto-slasher who looks in reverence to the legendary killers that came after him, like Jason and Michael. You see, the mythic level attributed to those icons is that they got franchises and kept coming back.
Those boys lifted it to a whole other level. They made an art form of it, turned themselves into legends.
Guys like Eugene, who started things out, didn't get the sequel treatment and made do with what they could manage.
We just hit hard, wiped everybody out, and disappeared as soon as we could.
There isn't really a slasher killer named Eugene that belonged to any horror flick I can think of. Apparently Eugene is actually intended by the writers to be the anonymous villain Billy from Black Christmas, and maybe also the killer from the Toolbox Murders. Just a little bit of trivia. Another little detail about Eugene that really gets to me is the subtle hint that his wife Jamie was once his survivor girl.
I was fast, wasn't I, Eugene?
You sure were. But you caught me, didn't you?
I did.
It's a weirdly cute little detail. The other standout of the film is the great Robert Englund as Doc Halloran. Playing against type is a force of good, the Dr. Loomis to Leslie's Michael Myers. Or, as Leslie dubs him, his Ahab.
He's an Ahab, and that is a remarkable thing.
Now, Doc Halloran is pretty on the nose as a Dr. Loomis surrogate, but Englund does it so well that I feel he'd be a worthy successor to the role.
Why are you following this girl? Who are you people?
We're just sitting here, man.
Oh, really? And why are you filming this?
Unfortunately, I feel like Englund isn't used enough. Halloran only makes a few appearances that aren't all that weighty, and I feel like Leslie and Halloran could have used more of a moment than what they got.
Expect to see more of me.
Still, the movie does add some extra dimension to Halloran beyond just being a Dr. Loomis clone with a little twist. Leslie filed a restraining order against Doc Halloran, so the dude can't come anywhere near him.
And if he tries to turn me in, he'll be arrested.
Why didn't Michael Myers do that? Of course, the film is filled with plenty of cameos, Easter eggs, and references to make any horror fan happy. Ever wanted to see Kane Hodder entering Freddy Krueger's house? This movie's got you covered. The late Zelda Rubinstein herself himself pops up in a role as the local old-timer that tells Leslie's backstory in detail to the survivor girl, in the way only she can with that eerie voice of hers.
Water that cold, bodies don't come back up. Turtles picked his bones clean.
Speaking of this backstory scene, it's one of the first times the film breaks from the found footage style. Yeah, this movie isn't always found footage. When Leslie actually dons his mask and farmer outfit and puts that hand scythe to work, the film becomes more of a standard slasher film with a conventional approach to filmmaking. Admittedly, the switch is a little jarring, especially at first, and I feel like the actual slasher sections of the film aren't quite as strong as the character-driven found footage sections. The film loses quite a bit of its humor in the third act consequently, and switches to a more serious horror tone. I mean, Leslie isn't gonna possibly be scary after all the time spent getting to know him after all. Even when he's finally killing people while wearing a mask, the last act kinda just sputters a bit. It feels really slow-paced, and the often monotonous score accompanying the final scenes don't help matters. Still, I guess this is just how it had to go. Just wish it played out better, but the movie does put effort into making Leslie a credible threat with his arc paying off. In the end, Leslie is a brutal, unfeeling killer who will wipe out everybody in his path. Still a cool dude. Okay, spoiler time. Now, I'm not gonna go into all the major spoilers and give away the whole ending because this is definitely one of those movies you need to see yourself, but I'm gonna go into quite a few sensitive details. Skip to this time code if you want to spare yourself. One of the interesting things about Leslie Vernon are the lies he tells. In the middle act, it's revealed by Doc Halloran that Leslie is in actuality Leslie Mancuso, some dude from Reno, and has no real connection to the town of Glen Echo or the Vernon family.
You have no idea who you're dealing with.
Leslie's whole backstory is made up.
So the backstories are fake. So what?
It's just an excuse for his slasher crusade, as the connection between Leslie and his survivor girl, Kelly, is that her great-uncle raped Leslie's fake mother, but clearly that was made up. So without the backstory, what's Leslie's motivation for all of this? Well, it's much more abstract. Leslie does what he does in the hopes that the horrifying slasher experience will unlock the untapped potential in his survivor girl, somebody he deems truly special.
You love her, don't you?
I love the idea of her. Of what I hope she'll find within herself.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
It's a fascinating idea. Evil exists to make good stronger.
I made a choice. To provide a counterbalance to all those things that we hold good.
Leslie's lies also cleverly extend to how the final act plays out. Leslie describes at length how he'll slaughter the kids he's led to the Vernon farmhouse, and when Taylor has a change of heart and decides to rescue the kids from Leslie, the crew uses their knowledge of Leslie's plan against him. Except Leslie always intended for Taylor to intervene. He played them for saps and made up the plan he told them to trick them into making all the wrong moves while trying to anticipate his, which is a neat aspect about the third act that really keeps it from just being a simple, conventional slasher film in the end, despite some cheesy lines.
Come get some.
Also, Psycho Killer plays during the end credits, which is fucking cool. Well, that was Behind the Mask. It has some flaws, but it's a charming, smart love letter to the slasher genre that's definitely worth a watch, especially during the Halloween season. More than a decade has passed since its release, but I enjoy every rewatch. Unfortunately, a sequel apparently in the works still hasn't come to light, and it probably never will at this rate. It'd be a real shame to never see Nathan Basil reprise the role of Leslie again. Oh well. I give Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, a copy of Paradise Lost out of Robert Englund playing Dr. Loomis. It is gonna get wet in here tonight. If you like this video, be sure to like it, but if you loved it, make sure to subscribe to me, Dr. Wolfula. Oh, and keep in touch with me on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Dr. Wolfula. Be sure to also help support the channel in any way you can, especially by donating to my Patreon, where you can keep up with me, get exclusive content, and talk to me directly. Finally, I have some new merch available on TeePublic, so if you'd like to wear some Dr. Wolfula or even goulash swag, head on down there. Of course, the channel wouldn't be possible without all the support I've gotten from my fans on Patreon, and I'd like to thank these folks for helping me make this happen. It really is an honor to make content for so many swell people, and I hope to do you guys proud in the future. Thanks to all of you once again from your old pal, Dr. Wolfula.
Paradise Lost. Found it.